Alright, so today we're going to be taking a look at solving one-step and multi-step equations. It's nothing too terribly difficult, but some common mistakes might happen, so we're going to take a look at how we're going to go about doing those things. The first thing we're going to look at is identifying what an equation is. Okay, so an equation is a math problem with an equal sign. Okay, so it's a math problem with the equal sign. An example of a equation would be something like 2x is equal to 8. Okay, so here we've got 2 of something is equal to 8. All it's saying is this side is completely balanced with this side. It's 100% equal. It's the same. So 2x and 8 are the same exact thing. Okay. Now our goal to solving equations is going to be to isolate our variable or get our variable by itself. Okay, so if we're still looking at the same exact problem, I've got to think, okay, how can I get this x by itself? Okay, and get rid of this 2. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll walk through some simpler problems first. Okay, so let's talk about when there's addition or subtraction in our problem. So for example, I have x plus 4 is equal to 10. Okay. Now, once again, like I said, our goal is to get our variable by itself. So when I do this, my final answer should be x is equal to something. Okay. I want to get rid of this 4. Now to do this, I need to get this 4 to the other side of the equation. And I like to sometimes draw a line down the middle to help me organize my work. So that way I understand, okay, this is one side of the equation and this is the other. Okay? To move this positive 4 to the other side of the equation and balance it out, I have to do the opposite operation. Okay? So if I'm adding, the opposite is subtracting. Okay, if I'm subtracting, the opposite is adding. Okay, if I'm multiplying, the opposite is dividing. And if I'm dividing, the opposite is multiplying. And that's really the main things we're going to be looking at today, right? Is how to cancel out these things. So in this case, I'm adding 4. To cancel out adding 4, I'm going to need to subtract 4 from both sides, because whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side to keep it balanced. So if I subtract 4 here, I'm going to subtract 4 over here. Okay. Now obviously, positive 4 and negative 4 is going to cancel out. That will be gone. Then I have to do 10 minus 4, which would give me 6. So my final answer would be x is equal to 6. Okay, if I was working a subtraction problem, or a problem with subtraction, if you had y minus 15 is equal to 20. Okay, once again, my goal is to get this y by itself. So I know my y needs to equal something. Okay, to cancel out subtraction, I'm going to add, so plus 15. If I do it to one side, I've also got to do it to the other, so plus 15. 20 plus 15 would give me 35. So y would equal 35. Now where this can get a little bit tricky is if you're dealing with negative numbers or you know, turning it from a negative to a positive. So for example, if you have z plus 10 is equal to 7. Okay, z plus 10 is equal to 7. Okay, I know in the end I want to have z is equal to something, right? To cancel out plus 10, I'm going to subtract 10. But when I get over here, I'm not going to have 10 to take away. So in my head, I look at these two numbers and I think, okay, which of these are farther away from 0? And I know 10, right, is obviously bigger than 7, but it's negative. So 10 minus 7 is going to give me 3, but because my bigger number was negative, it's going to leave me with negative 3. Okay. Now that's the basics of addition and subtraction with it. We can take a look at multiplying and dividing. Okay, and those look slightly different, but not too terribly different. We might have a problem that says, 3x is equal to 12. And you'll notice, if you look at the equation itself, this 3 is right next to the x. What that means is multiplication. Anytime you have a number right next to the variable, that's going to be multiplication. To cancel multiplication, like we talked about up here, right? To cancel multiplication, we're going to divide. So I'm going to divide by whatever my coefficient is. Now, if you remember last class, we talked about coefficient just being the number in front of x, or in front of your variable. So I'm going to divide by that same coefficient. Okay, if I do it to this side, I've also got to do it to this side. Okay, this ends up canceling, or it leaves you with 1. So we'll have 1x is equal to 12 divided by 3 will give me 4. And the same concept applies to dividing as well. So say I have y divided by 2 is equal to, I don't know, 11. Okay. Now, remember, fractions are just division problems. So to cancel out dividing by 2, I'm going to multiply by 2. Okay. These two will cancel. But remember, what you do to one side, you also have to do to the other. 11 times 2 will give you 22. So we'll have y is equal to 22. Okay? And so that's basically the foundation for solving equations, right? Making sure we're doing the opposite operation and things are occurring on both sides of the equation. If you do it to one side, you have to do it to the other just to keep the equation balanced. All right? So let's take a look at some multi-step problems. Now these can be a little trickier, but not too bad. Okay, for multi-step, the rules are slightly different. Okay, for multi-step. Okay, so you might have a problem that has more than one step. So 2x plus 4 equals 14. Okay. When we're solving these problems, okay, we know in the end we want our variable by itself. Okay, but we can't. That can't be the first thing we jump to getting by itself. Okay, we have to get rid of everything else around it. So if I'm looking here, I know I need to get this 2x by itself, and the thing that's keeping me from doing that is this 4. Okay, once I get this 4 out of here, I can take care of just this variable by itself. So we want to isolate the coefficient in the variable. by doing this, I'll subtract 4, subtract 4. That will give me 2x is equal to 10. Okay, and from there it's just one more step here. To get the x by itself, we'll divide by 2. Divide by 2. That will give me x is equal to 5. Okay, you can also have the same thing with subtraction or division, right? So we can have, I don't know, 3x divided by 5 plus 1 is equal to, let's go with 4. Okay, this is a little bit more complicated because I'll explain to you in just a second why, but I'll walk you through this step by step how we're going to solve this. So first thing we want to take care of is this plus 1. We'll subtract it over. Okay, we'll be left with 3x over 5 is equal to 3. Now, there's a couple ways you can approach this. I'll show you one step now, which takes a little bit longer, but you'll make sure you get the right answer, and then I'll show you a little shortcut here in a second as well. So, to cancel this dividing by 5, I'm going to multiply by 5. So times 5 times 5. Okay, this will cancel. 3 times 5 will give you 15. From there, surefire way, we divide by 3. And we'll get x is equal to 5. Now, another way you could have approached this, and maybe solved it a little bit faster if you're more comfortable with it, is from this point, right? So if we had 3x divided by 5 is equal to 3, you can always multiply by the reciprocal. So all we would have to do is flip these two things. So I'd multiply by 5 over 3 and multiply this side by 5 over 3. So it just saves you a step, right? Because these cancel here. And then here, 3 times 5 is 15, divided by 3 will be 5. So it's the same problem, just slightly different. Times x plus 4 is equal to, I don't know, 16. Okay. We can distribute first. All right, we can take this 2 times this x. It's 2 times the 4. Gives me 2x plus 8 is equal to 16. From there, we want to take care of the plus 8 by subtracting it across this middle line. Okay, that'll give me 2x is equal to positive 8 divided by 2, and you'll get x is equal to 4. When you're also dealing with distribution, you can use a little shortcut, although you don't have to if you have that same problem. So 2 times x plus 4 equals 16. Before you distribute, if it's just your distribution left, right, you can actually divide this out first. So here what you're left with is x plus 4 is equal to 8. And then you can solve the problem that way. As you'll see, the answer ends up being the same either way. So it's really up to preference. If you want to make sure you distribute first, that's great. Now the only time you'll run into problems with this is if there's like 7 plus this or something in front. Then you'll have to take care of that. So for example, say I have, actually let's do one where we've got a variable. So let's go 3y plus 4y plus 2 is equal to, let's see, let's go with 22. Okay, so in this problem, like we talked about before, we need to distribute first. Okay, so we'll leave this the same. 3y plus 4y plus 8 is equal to 22. Okay, we've got like terms here. So we'll combine those. We'll have 7y plus 8 is equal to 22. Subtract our 8. Okay, subtract our 8. That ends up giving us, kind of ran out of room here. Whoops. 7y is equal to 14. And then last but not least, we'll divide by 7. We'll get y is equal to 2. Okay, so we won't go too crazy in depth with solving equations, but that's kind of the basics for it, and that's something that we're going to build upon as we go through these lessons some more. And as we get into bigger, harder problems, these basics will always remain the same.